How do we rationalize poverty? How do we bring ourselves to acknowledge the fact that billions are in need of basic necessities while we spend our money on luxuries and entertainment?
$8 billion a year are spent on cosmetics in the United States.
$11 billion is spent on ice cream in Europe.
Throughout the world, $780 billion is spent on military.
You don't have to be an expert in ethics to see that we all deal with this troubling thought every day on some level, whether we realize it or not. In its most basic form, the problem originates simply from an unwillingness to share.
1.1 billion people in developing countries have inadequate access to water, and 2.6 billion lack basic sanitation.
1.8 billion people who have access to water source within 1 kilometer, but not in their house or yard, consume around 20 liters per day.
The highest average water use in the world is in the US at 600 liters a day.
There's more than enough for everyone on Earth, yet things like starvation are a reality for millions. Add to that the other human complications: greed, corruption, war.
At least 80% of humanity lives on less than $10 a day.
And it quickly becomes apparent that poverty is a very complex problem. And it's not so much an issue that has to be dealt with as it is a part of the human condition.
There are 2.2 billion children in the world.
1 billion children suffer in poverty.
That's every second child.
Now, it's very easy to take this mindset of indifference and say, well, if I were the one in abject poverty, I wouldn't depend on someone on the other side of the world to fight my battles. And that's fair. But we can't fool ourselves into thinking that poverty and its suffering are something that's permanent, or that they're going to fix themselves. They're not.
2.2 million children die each year because they are not immunized.
Nor can we think that the big institutions, the UN, the World Bank, are the only ones capable of handling them. For centuries, we've tried numerous approaches to try and reduce this inequality in the distribution of resources, and yet we've never seemed to be able to get it right.
Around 27 to 28% of children in developing countries are estimated to be underweight or stunted.
That's because too many of these approaches have overestimated our capacity to cooperate for a greater cause, even if it means little or no self-gain. So really what the fight against poverty all boils down to is an individual struggle more than anything. You know, we can choose to accept the improbability of a solution and say we did our best, but poverty was just too big.
It would only cost an additional $6 billion for basic education across the world.
Or we can take a stand when it matters most and send the message that this is where it stopped.
It would only cost an additional $9 billion for water and sanitation across the world.
This is where the coexistence of gross luxury and absolute destitution ends. This fight against poverty, this battle for humanity, isn't being fought somewhere over in Africa or on the skid rows of the world. It's being fought on the battlefields of ourselves. It's up to every one of us, the individuals, whether this generation is able to make any substantial difference, or whether it just takes the same indifferent attitude and lets humanity starve.
It would only cost an additional $13 billion for basic health and nutrition across the world.